Hello friends, welcome into Salt City Hoops. My name is Mark Russell Pereira, back at you once again to talk to you about all things about the NBA, the Utah Jazz, and the latest happenings in my brain into your ears and eyes to talk about. So, it's NBA free agency time. It's a wild time. There is so much going on, and in this day in the NBA, the modern salary cap era, a lot of the activity is happening before free agency, the table setting period of kind of aligning what a team's salary cap kind of looks like going into the next season before they get into free agency. That's all happening wet and wild before the actual start of free agency, which officially started June 30th on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm recording this on the evening of June 30th. So I have my browser window open. I have social media refreshing. I have a private Slack channel refreshing on all sorts of updates as they come in. So I'm sure there's going to be some transaction that gets announced now that perhaps might be missed. We'll cover that later. But I wanted to get on the horn today and get a show out and talk to you guys because there's a number of things in Jazzland and the NBA at large that I think are fun to talk about. Also, I'd like to have next week's episode covering all about Salt Lake City Summer League that is happening this weekend with four teams in there, and we have California Classic Summer League also happening. But for the Jazz, we have Darren Peterson, Ace Bailey, Cody Williams playing in Summer League this weekend, and a few other notable names for the Thunder, Grizzlies, and the Atlanta Hawks, I believe. So I want next week's episode to be like, all right, let's have some fun talking about this, because today is actually going to be kind of a downer and me getting in my feelings a little bit and being a little emotional about some things. So I wanted to make sure, like, hey, let's talk about what we know so far about the Utah Jazz, about Walker Kessler's open restricted free agency, some happy news, perhaps, with the bringing back Jusuf Nurkic. And I've been very loud and very boisterous about that. Salt City Hoops is a place that you're going to get really good analytical content, not just obviously from me, but Dan Clayton, Ken Clayton, Zarin, everyone else that you've heard on this podcast as well, from Riley and Justin. And like I think we do excel at, hey, this is the business of basketball kind of understanding. This is how the salary cap works. This is how we're going to build a team. And these are the rules that we have to be concerned about. These are the tax payments we have to be concerned about. And this is how all these roster pieces fit together. This is how other teams are thinking about it. This is how other teams handle the business of basketball typically. And as we get closer and closer to resolving this Walker Kessler saga and having some disappointing news after disappointing news, it just I tend to forget that, like, I am first and foremost, I'm just a fan, right? Like, I'm not a journalist, I'm not a reporter, I'm not even a paid opinion haver. You're hearing this for fun, right? I come on every week or so to talk about the Jazz and the NBA, and I hope you subscribe for free to come back for more, and we have some fun things to talk about, especially this. We've been doing this Jazz stuff, the Salt City Hoop Show, for a while on some bad teams. We're going to have an exciting team to talk about, and we're going to have a lot of fun next year, Walker Kessler or no Walker Kessler. So keep coming back for that. But I'm just a fan. I'm a fan. I got a day job. I got a family. My wife is out of town this week, and I got I'm solo parenting 3 boys at home this week. They're all sleeping. They're probably going to interrupt in the middle of what I'm doing here as I record late at night here, and just because that's life with little kids. And yeah, I got a bottle of wine here, and I'm thinking about how the Jazz have managed the Walker Kessler situation, and just thinking, like, okay, my brain is telling me one thing and my heart is feeling another. And so we don't have a guest today, so I just kind of want to get my thoughts out to you, and I want to hear back from you. What are you thinking about how the Jazz handled the situation? And we don't have a resolution yet. Walker Kessler could be back, but if he is back, it's probably going to be at a much, much, much higher number than we'll get to. And like, we haven't lost the analytical side of this. I'll get into the likely ramifications of a higher salary for Walker Kessler for sure. It's not just Ryan Smith's pocketbook. I don't care about Ryan Smith's pocketbook. I care about building a team under the rules that the NBA sets for building a team. But as I think about this team, I think what is really bothering me the most, friends, and this is what I want some help with, is we dealt with 4 years of tanking And I was always just kind of okay with it because you have to be so precise in picking your spots in the modern NBA. I saw something recently. I'm always bad at like remembering these historical things sometimes, but 10 straight years with 10 different NBA champions or something to that effect. And even though the NBA champions have been different every year, I think we can look at teams like the Celtics and the Thunder and the upcoming Spurs as like they are set up for repeated bites at the apple. And you look at a team like the Denver Nuggets to have one of the three best players in the NBA, and because of various depth issues and getting certain extensions wrong, getting certain signings not quite right, like and being a little cheap, perhaps, and they have some cheapness decisions this summer. Like they haven't had that sustained, like we're always going to be their success that you'd like to see. Dallas was set up to kind of look like that for a little bit, and then what happened to them? And they got a little lucky with Cooper Flag. See how they rebuild. So when it comes to the 4 years of tanking for the Jazz, I think that the reason I was just always kind of okay with it, and I kind of had fun watching every single game during these past 4 years, is because I knew that the people in charge, every decision they were making around the edges and each draft pick they were making or each transaction they were doing, even things like the John Collins trade, right? They're setting up all the pieces on the chessboard, or pick a different board game that you like or whatever, but some sort of situation in a board game where they don't come out firing, attacking right away, but they're building up their resources on the side ever so slowly. And we all kind of make fun of Danny Ainge's comment about big game hunting from a couple years ago. And maybe the Jazz weren't quite primed to go big game hunting with the top 8 protected pick that they owed Oklahoma City to the Derek Favors salary dump, which I will always reference. That and building up your resources on the side and like kind of doing all these setup moves slowly so that when it was finally time to pounce, it was going to be like a, a an avalanche of success, immediate success. And that's part of the reason I've been so vociferous about how successful the Jazz are going to be this year, because the Jazz aren't doing any setup moves at all. Like this isn't, oh, we drafted Darren Peterson, awesome, by the way, who is really buoying my spirits lately. Darren Peterson is. That this is not going to be some waiting period, like waiting for Ace Bailey and Darren Peterson to kind of, let's see how good they get, right? This isn't waiting for Cooper Flag. It's those guys, but we also have Lowry and Jaren Jackson. Like once we trade for Jaren Jackson Jr., this is now, oh, we have a real team. And the players that even I'm down on Bryce Sensabaugh, I'm down on Kyle Filipowski. A lot of people are down on Isaiah Collier. A lot of people are down on Cody Williams. I see avenues for all 4 of those guys to, like, I don't see them as starters in the NBA. Even if I might be down on them, they could be rotation pieces. Okay, but they're playing 12 minutes a night here and there or whatever. They can find a role in the NBA. I think the reason, like, they're very much established themselves as NBA talents, if not NBA starters. So all of a sudden I'm looking at this year being like, we're set. This is it. This top 6 plus this depth that we have, you add a possible signing with a mid-level exception, and we are set. We are going to stun people. You're hearing people in this pre-offseason chatter like, oh yeah, the Jazz might be like a 6, 7, 8 seed in the play-in mix. I'm like, you guys don't understand. This team is set. Ready to go. Ready to dominate with 3 dominating front court players and 3 backcourt players that are dynamic and interesting and young. And then we go from a 98% sure thing that Walker Kessler is coming back to, I'll get into the details why, but like now we're sitting at it like a 50-50 proposition that Walker Kessler will be back in Utah. And there are alternatives to Walker Kessler. He's not the only center out there, but he's the only center at his caliber that is remotely available for Utah at the moment. And we need a center. We need a center. And it is so defeating to me to do all this tanking to just let Walker Kessler out the door. when the team is set up to dominate this year and for years and beyond. And this entire time I've been skeptical is not quite the right word, but just a little like surprised and wanting to feel out the whole thing with respect to how much does Walker Kessler cost. And I want to emphatically say a couple things. This is not about necessarily what I think of Walker Kessler, the basketball player or the person. I got the sheriff right over my shoulder here. But rather, when you give X player Y money, if you give a solid player a lot of money, based on the salary cap rules, it reduces your ability to spend money on other good players. And this isn't just like, oh, you'll fly into the luxury tax and then Ryan Smith has to pay money. It's like, oh, once you get over XYZ, like the first apron, right, then you're limited on what other roster transactions you can do. If you fly over the second apron, it is incredibly restrictive on what you can do with your roster moves. If you do certain transaction types, like use the mid-level exception, which you've heard us talk about many, many times on the show, like if the Jazz use the mid-level exception, XYZ, that hard caps you at the first apron. Like you can't go over that. So if you sign Walker Kessler to a balloon contract that you weren't expecting, all of a sudden you're up against the first apron and you can't use the entire mid-level exception. Even if Ryan Smith says, I'm fine to pay that, I wasn't expecting to, but I'm fine paying the luxury taxes here. Well, there's still only so much money you can spend before the NBA says, hey, based on the rules, you actually can't. You're not allowed to. And so that reduces the quality player that you can bring in. Maybe small thing around the edges, but like when I'm thinking about this team is not gearing up for a let's see what we got progression here. This team is built with the salaries on its books to be immediately competitive. That is the plan. So what is actually happening with Walker Kessler? And I haven't figured out exactly what order I want to cover this because there's been points of this whole saga along the way where the objectively min-max analytical approach to a decision was correctly made by the front office. As far as how do you build a team with the restrictions that are in place and where should you use your leverage or not. And now that we're at this brinksmanship phase, I feel squirrely about it. And I laugh because I don't pull this card too much because who gives a shit, but like I'm a corporate attorney. Like I worked at big law firms and did a lot of high leverage transactions. I still do a lot of high leverage transactions where you're on the phone late at night, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And yeah, there's a lot of brinksmanship involved, right? Auction scenarios. Like there's all sorts of, especially in the M&A context. And that should never bother me, right? You want your client to get the best deal possible, and they're going to be a little upset if they lose out on something because the attorneys advise them one way or another. There's always going to be a conflict between the clients and the attorneys and such. The clients are also hiring their own independent business like analysts and that sort of thing. So, and it can be contentious, but I am so stressed and I'm waffling and I'm wafing over this Walker Kessler brinksmanship. Like it's like that's my basketball team. That's my favorite sport. It's my favorite team, and I'm squirreling away at some of the decisions that the Angels and Zanuck have made along the way. Where could we have made an illogical or a less logical decision and come out better? The conclusion is that we absolutely could have and would have, but that requires a crazy, stupid amount of hindsight. So, but we can look. I'm being emotional here. Like this is fine to like add a heavy dose of hindsight to this whole thing. And the first point you look to is the non-extension back in the fall. And the Jazz were looking at the summer of 2026. We're sitting here, June 30th, 2026. That this summer, we were going to have like something like $20 million in cap space, maybe $25 million in cap space. Like, it was going to be a useful, healthy, legitimate amount of cap space to improve the team. And that number can, up and down a little bit depending on what happened. And this was, with Taylor Hendricks on the team, with Walt Clayton on the team, no Jaren Jackson, obviously. I had to take a sip of wine as I get into this thought. So, if you extended Walker Kessler in the fall, the cap space is gone. And the min-max objective logical thing to do, and I don't know, this is a very difficult conversation to have with a player, and I'm not sure, and these are players in their early 20s, mid-20s, like these are young guys, and it's hard to tell a guy your 9-figure payday isn't going to happen because right now, because when we get to next summer, we might want to add somebody to this team to make it a more competitive team. I think you'd have to be really, really dialed in on, as a player, on the business of basketball in a way that like very, very few players are. These players, their entire lives have been built around the concept that they are God's gift to basketball. And even if they are not selfish basketball players, their entire goal is what is good for me, and especially that very first extension. Where, yeah, you make a healthy amount of a few millions in your rookie deal, but Walker Kessler's a late first round pick. He wasn't making a ton of money before. He like healthy, you're comfortable money, 100%. I'd love to make Walker Kessler money, but not multi-generational life-changing money. And when he's getting to that extension, he's thinking like, hey, I don't give a shit about the 1 or 2 guys you can add with cap space in the summer. Like, I want to be here. Can we work out a deal? I've been a good tanking soldier. I've gotten better every year. Is there really not a single deal that we can come to? And the Jazz say, like, if you take a big fat discount, we'll give you one. 5 years, $100 million, $20 million a year, right? Something like that. And that's under market for Walker Kessler. Like, that's not, I wouldn't say an insulting offer, but it is telling him straight up, like, if you want to murk our cap space for next summer, it's going to require you to take a huge sacrifice. And he was hurt by that. Understandably, not understandably, like the Jazz did a logical thing in the moment. They didn't know Jaren Jackson Jr. was going to be available for the relatively low price that Jackson Jr. was available. And you can tell Walker Kessler and his agent team, till the cows come home, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a forward. He's not competing with your spot. If I'm Walker Kessler, I am absolutely looking at Jaren Jackson Jr. and saying, I understand I can play next to him in a lot of lineups, but am I closing in high leverage moments? Am I even starting sometimes? Like, what is this? Like, he's not a point guard. Like, he is, and he's not like a 3-4 Derrick Jones Jr. type. He's a 4-5, like, and I'm a 5. Like, that is obviously cutting in. Again, it requires a player to be like very, very, very stoic about his place on the team and how the business of basketball works and how to build the next great Jazz team. And Walker Kessler's not been a Jazz fan his whole life like us. He's looking out for Walker, and I think that's fine. And it was disappointing in the moment, but then you say like, well, there's restricted free agency coming up, and then you get the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, and you're like, maybe we should have extended him in the past. So like, I keep coming back to like, should we have done an illogical thing? And a corollary to this discussion, an argument that Justin Sweeney and I have had over the years, and something I used to fight him about, but ultimately we reached kind of like a detente on, that we approach it differently, is the Jazz had offers for pennies on the dollar for like Conley and Clarkson at the beginning of the very first tank year, the very first post Rudy and Donovan Mitchell year. Like, there were offers to like really fire sale this down to the studs and get rid of Conley, Clarkson, etc. get rid of all the winning players. Now, we didn't know anything about Lauri Markkanen. We didn't know anything about Will Hardy, who ended up being great guys. Walker Kessler, for that matter. Rookie Walker Kessler. But the idea was that Victor Wembanyama, we knew at the start of that season, was such a transformational talent coming up that the debate is, what would it have been worth, Lauri Markkanen doesn't get most improved player. Like, we don't learn as much as we should about maybe Walker Kessler and Will Hardy. We just completely nuke that season way more so we can get 5, 6, 7, 8% more chances in lottery balls. To this day, I don't think the nuking of the roster was worth the extra 5, 6, 7, 8% in lottery balls. And Justin says it absolutely was. And we should have taken pennies on the dollar for Conley. Now, the deal that we eventually did for Conley helped us get Jaren Jackson Jr., but by that point, Victor Wembanyama is dominating the West with the San Antonio Spurs. Let me pour some more wine as I think about this next thought. So, I'm thinking, hey, if we weren't going to do an illogical thing in the fall, where could we have done more? Have we made every single correct choice logical or not logical? And the next thing you got to point to is the negotiation period before free agency, where teams are not allowed to talk to Walker Kessler. Now, tampering is rampant in the NBA. You just can't be overt about it. And one of the things that comes up in trade discussions is whether a player is going to re-sign with the acquiring team. And I mentioned in the past, this is all conjecture, but if the Jazz are negotiating with the Indiana Pacers on what a Walker Kessler deal looks like, there are going to be subtle discussions between the Pacers and Walker Kessler's camp on what his upcoming free agency looks like. And Indiana is only willing to pay XYZ draft picks based on what Kessler's expectation is. And the Clippers deal for Ivica Zubac, I think, was a great deal for both sides. I do not think that Indiana fans or Indiana's owners and management should feel bad about losing the number 5 pick in a point guard rife draft where they have one of the best point guards in the NBA. I just don't think that's something that they should feel bad. They got a great deal for a much cheaper center who is currently better than Ivica Zubac, or better than Walker Kessler. Ivica Zubac is a better player. Maybe not by much, but he's a better player, making under $20 million a year. And the Pacers didn't consummate that transaction, so we'll never see what happens here. But then when you get into this exclusive negotiating window, what does Kessler's camp know versus what does the Jazz camp know about what Kessler's offers are available? And it was eventually revealed. I'm not going to get into the gentlemanliness of when offers are. That's not what I care about. The numbers and the years are what matter at the end of the day. Not how was communication handled. That's a story to be written another day. But as far as the number and the years are concerned, it gets eventually released through the media that the Jazz were offering 5 years, $140 million. And I have not seen a single basketball analyst look at that and say, oh, that's underpayment for Walker Kessler. Oh, they're really turning the screws on him in restricted free agency. They are really putting an anvil on that figure. And it's not that Walker Kessler was ridiculous not to accept it. It was more that he shouldn't feel insulted by that or whatever. And, Kessler might be, if you're in your mid-20s, I think he's someone who's hey, I have a chance if you give me a 3 or 4 year deal instead of locking me down for 5. I can get back into free agency when I'm 28, 29 instead of 30. And if I'm a 30-year-old center, my offers available might not be as robust than if I'm a 29-year-old center. So shorter deal, up the amount. He knows something about what offers he can probably get. Now, again, the logical part of this, as we've covered many, many times, is there was no cap space available. It was from the Bulls, it was from the Nets. Two very bad basketball teams that, frankly, have other things to do. And inviting Walker Kessler to go get an offer from those teams was logical. But as again, we're in this hindsight situation with the Lakers now looming, and we'll get to why the Lakers are not just looming, but they're threatening. Is if this could have been done with 4 years, 120, hey man, lop off a year, and we'll give you a little bit more money and call it a day. Now, team-to-player negotiations work in many different ways depending on the context. And I've been in many situations in negotiations before where your best and final actually just means your best and final. And sometimes a lot of counterparties, especially unsophisticated counterparties, are thinking like, oh, well, that was just their first offer. And the way negotiation works is you give your first offer, I give my first offer, and they're both ridiculous, and we'll come meet in the middle. And sometimes in sophisticated negotiations, your client comes in and just like, no, we just don't want to waste, like, this is our offer. This is our best offer. And if there's something to move us off of that number from an external leverage situation, okay, like, we'll talk. And I think that's what the Jazz were playing with here. I think that's a logical step to take. I love negotiations like that. I think it's very respectful to tell the counterparty, like, I'm not dicking you around. Like, this is my best and final. If you don't like it, that's okay. We can respect each other that way. With how upset Walker's camp was about that offer, should the Angels have understood the market better at that point? Should they have raised all of their eyebrows and said, how in the world is 5 years, 140 not good enough? And their logical part of their brain would have said, that is good enough. That is Walker Kessler money. That is exactly how much he's worth. If he was an unrestricted free agent, maybe we go up to $31, $32, $33 million a year as an unrestricted free agent because we got to deal with external leverage a little bit more seriously as an unrestricted free agent. But not only is he a restricted free agency, he's a restricted free agent, so we can turn the screws a little bit, but there's also no other teams that we have to worry about. And I'm wondering if, like, they misread some tea leaves insofar as, like, do you go into a more illogical situation there? Because then now we get to the threat. And one of the tea leaves that perhaps should have been known better. I am as surprised as anyone that LeBron James is not only leaving the Los Angeles Lakers, but he's saying, I'll sign with anywhere. I'm open to all options. At every single juncture of LeBron's career, he has cared about kind of being a max player. And even if he was willing to leave the Lakers, it sounded like more of a, hey, let's sign and trade me for $30 million, $35 million, $40 million or so. Like, I'll take less than the max, but I'm not taking no $15 million mid-level exception. I'm not taking no $5 million taxpayer mid-level exception money. Like, I'm still a $30 million player. Damn well expect to be signed it for that much. I was not expecting him to say, like, hey, Lakers, it's been to leave LA entirely. Because now his only options are, because he's not signing with the Nets and the Bulls on their cap space, right? His only option is to sign for very, very low 8-figure deals, like 10, 11, 12, $13 million, or even lower than that as a mercenary. And I'm not exactly feeling bad about LeBron James' pocketbook, but that is a very, very, very out of character moment for him. And so if he goes the sign and trade route, that drastically reduces the Lakers' salary cap availability. But for him to leave entirely, it creates the Lakers now have $59 million in cap space. $59 million. That has Luka on the books. Austin Reeves just signed a max contract. But the cap hit for Austin Reeves' contract does not hit. They can do all their other business first, and then his new salary will hit the books. So right now he's only on the books for like $20-ish million. He will be on the books for significantly like over double that. So that's why the Lakers have $59 million in cap space. I believe I'm calculating that right. It's 50 something. 52, 59. They have max cap space. Right? And it was something that was unexpected. And not only are they the Los Angeles Lakers, but it's a Luka Doncic team. And Luka Doncic plays well with a rim running shot blocking center. Detroit and Jalen Duren are going through a parallel situation, right? But for some and I don't know if this is just like selfish, like this is Jazz centric, so this is what we're thinking about. But the reason Kessler feels like more of a threat is because while Duren is the better player, playoff performance notwithstanding, Jalen Duren is a better player than Walker Kessler. Like Jalen Duren is a really, really, really good player. I think there are questions about playoff fit and performance. We haven't even seen Walker Kessler in the playoffs. But what Jalen Duren did last year was special. And if your eyes were only on him during the playoffs, I encourage you to see a little bit more of the regular season because he was a special player last year. 60-win Detroit Pistons team. That surprise from the Detroit Pistons was not just Cade Cunningham. Like they had kind of a flawed roster, a non-shooting roster, and Jalen Duren's superlative performance got them to where it is. But for Luka Doncic especially, Duren might be the better player, but Walker Kessler is probably the better fit with Luka Doncic. So that's why even from Lakers fans, it feels like they're kind of targeting Walker Kessler a little bit more than they would be for Jalen Duren. So not only are the Lakers a threat, but they have a genuine need at center. DeAndre Ayton opted into his $8 million player option, but he's hardly fringy starting center, more of a backup center these days. They have an actual need at center. They have a whole lot of cap space, and they're Los Angeles. This is where the illogical, why I'm just feeling really upset about this coming in is like, should we have considered the Lakers more of a threat and stemmed off this issue? Because what you're worried about with the Lakers offer is like, yes, Kessler is a restricted free agent. We can match any offer that the Lakers give. But it's not just the money, it's the years and the options also have to be matched. You have to match the exact same offer that is given by the Lakers as the contract that you're working with. I like to have my numbers specific here. So, looking at $52 million, I said $59 million. $52 million of space for the Lakers right now. No Rui, right? No Marcus Smart, who's rumored to go to the Houston Rockets, and obviously no LeBron James. So I think that we'll get to the salary number in a minute and how that affects the tax and the aprons, but it's also the years become more of an issue. Because if the Lakers go to Walker Kessler and say, like, look, man, so your offer has to be at least 2 years excluding options. So they could say, like, look, we'll give you a 2-year, $40 million a year contract with a player option for another $40 million on top of that. That is absurd annual value. Like, that is not cogent as a number that Walker Kessler is worth. But the Lakers preserve a lot of flexibility that way, and their opportunity cost. I was listening to the conversation that I had with Ken Clayton a few weeks back. on the center options and why I didn't consider Lakers a threat. I still believe this, by the way, and this is getting more analytical, which has gotten us into trouble to begin with. But there is an opportunity cost here for the Lakers. If the Jazz match that $40 million 3-year deal, $40 million a year 3-year deal, then the Jazz can wait all the way until July 8th to match that deal. And in the meantime, players who the Jazz would, or who the Lakers would sign instead of Walker Kessler, they start signing other places. They will not wait for the Walker Kessler situation to resolve itself to go sign with other teams. The reason is because those other teams are not waiting for those players to wait for Walker Kessler. They will move on to different players. So if you have other teams other than the Lakers who are looking at who are we filling out with our mid-level exception, if you're the Bulls, if you're the Nets, and you're trying to get some good veterans in the room for XYZ amount of money, you're going to sign the players who are willing to sign with you then in that moment. And if you're a player who has a contingent offer from the Lakers, and you're like, well, I'm going to wait for this contingent offer from the Lakers. If they can't get Kessler, every other team makes all their moves. The Lakers get Kessler, and you're sitting there with no offer from the Lakers, and every other team has their rosters filled up. So players don't want to do that. They're taking the sure thing. So if the players are taking the sure thing, they're taking the better opportunities for playing time, whatever, and the Lakers get their Walker Kessler offer matched, the Lakers have a hard time filling out their roster with decent guys. So I still think that there's an opportunity cost there. I also think there's an opportunity cost with next summer. Next year's summer free agent class is looking way sexier than the summer. This summer has some nice rotation players that'd be nice on the Jazz. We've talked a lot about a mid-level exception last week. Go check it out. But there's not a whole lot of sex appeal at the top of the market. Like Walker Kessler and Jalen Durner are kind of like the sexiest names out there as free agents, and they're both restricted. We've had a lot more activity. Well, LeBron James is a free agent. We weren't expecting that one again. So next summer, if the Lakers have Reeves and Kessler on the books, they can't get one of those guys. They can get one of those guys if they just have Reeves and Luka. They would have about $42 million in space to go sign a free agent. And that's not super duper max money, but like you can convince a guy to come play for the LA Lakers for $42 million. You could fit a third max guy on that team. And so if you sign Walker Kessler to $40 million, well, now your team is Luka, Austin Reeves, and Walker Kessler. Those are your three guys. That's your big three. That's it. And then you're filling it out with like a mid-level exception and a bunch of low salary players who probably aren't very good. That's not a very good team. If the three of them can stay healthy, okay, it's a solid team, I guess. But it's not a contender, I don't think. If you need more than just like a big three, unless your big three is like three of the top 10 players in the NBA, top 15 players in the NBA, unless your big three are three all NBA guys, and not just like fringy third teamers, but like first, second all NBA guys. Unless you have three of those guys, it's hard to like craft a big three and flotsam and call yourselves a contender. That's just my opinion. So if I'm the Lakers, I don't think I would offer something that ridiculous. And the Jazz would match it anyways, I think. I would. The limit doesn't exist for what I would match at this point because I'm emotional at this point. As I mentioned at the top, like we are set to be so good and to be right on the precipice of just having this perfectly curated roster for 2026. We got Walker Kessler saying, like, give me $38 million a year. Tony Jones saying that Walker Kessler has met with at least 3 teams, and there are offers in the mid to high $30 million a year. And I'm just stunned that teams are willing to pay that much for Walker Kessler. But now that we're in this situation, the logical thing says work out a sign and trade to get that player to get Walker Kessler to a new team where you're getting something back in return, a couple first round picks perhaps. Or you tell that other team, like, no, we would just match that, right? And would you rather have 2 first round picks or $38 million of Walker Kessler? Because you can't replace Walker Kessler's $38 million with just like $38 million of other guys. It doesn't work like that. You can't just be like over the cap and just say, okay, we're over the cap and we don't have Walker Kessler, so let's just sign $38 million of guys. Now, if we sign and traded Walker Kessler into the Lakers cap space, we could get a little trade exception out of that. Base year compensation rules affect exactly how much that trade exception could be. Because we would be trading him into cap space, there could be a little bit of maneuverability there. But you're just not replacing $38 million with just like signing $38 million of free agents. It's not how this works. So for me, the opportunity cost of losing Walker Kessler is just too great. I think if he's on a $38 million contract, that's tradable down the line. That's tradable. Neutral to slightly negative value, perhaps, but tradable. And so I look back to the non-extension, saying, like, well, maybe we just screw the cap space, get this guy on a contract that's fair. Screw restricted free agency and the levers that we can pull in restricted free agency to get him on a lower contract. There's a risk associated with letting a guy go to restricted free agency that we're going to pay him $15 million a year more than we want to. So let's give him more of what he might be interested in now to keep him from talking to teams at all. Maybe the logical choices should have been made. And then I talk myself back into, if Walker Kessler knew that like there were high $30 million a year offers out there waiting for him in restricted free agency, he's not taking anything less than that from the Jazz in the exclusive negotiation period. Like Kessler can't be overt, and his agency can't be overt and like really going to teams. And like Walker Kessler flew to LA. He was accosted in LAX by someone filming him. And I think it was I'm assuming it was LAX. Filming him about his visit to LA, and he's taking boardroom meetings and all this shit. You can't do that during the exclusive negotiation period. But I'd be dumbfounded if he didn't have like an idea of what offers were generally out there. And how much of an open secret was it that LeBron was just straight up leaving Los Angeles to give them this cap space that we didn't know that they would have? I'm just... What should we have known from an illogical perspective and just made a better effort at this whole thing? And not to get too into it, but like once you add Keontae's extension next year, like you're looking at team being very much over the first apron and perhaps flying into the second apron for a team that we don't know what it looks like for next season. Now, this upcoming season, with Walker Kessler's salary, looks like the only way to avoid the luxury tax with the reported salaries is by not using the mid-level exception. That whole fun show we did last week or 2 weeks ago on the mid-level exception is just no more. None of those guys are available to the Jazz without paying the luxury tax. And I am not sympathetic to Ryan Smith's pocketbook. As I've said, I don't care about his wallet until he starts putting me on the payroll to go get him some coffee. It's not something that I, as a fan, care about. It's something management cares about. Now, if I'm management, I'm trying to go to Ryan Smith and being like, hey, Wasn't expecting to go in the luxury tax this year, but as I listen to Mark Pereira and Salt City Hoops, this team's ready to compete right now. And if you have like a top 4 team in your conference, luxury tax should be in play. And so if there's a chance to add like a real contributor at the mid-level exception and it would require you to go in the tax, I think they should do it. But that is more of a surprise thing that I didn't think was something we would have to care about. As it stands, we're going to go into the luxury tax with just signing minimums for the rest of our we don't have too many roster spots open, but if we just sign minimums and $38 million of Walker Kessler, we probably actually have to get rid of John Conchar and dump him with a couple second-round picks to get into the luxury tax. Actually, I can look at this right now. Go to take a look at the salary cap 101 sheet too, going through some hypotheticals. But if I type in $38 million for Walker Kessler, and Jusuf Nurkic, who I don't want to forget about. We'll talk about Jusuf Nurkic in a minute. Jusuf Nurkic is on the books for 2 years, $22 million, so let's call it $11 million this year. We will be $9,000 below the luxury tax with 2 roster spots open. So you got to have at least 14 players. So like you're looking at a team that is absolutely going to be in the luxury tax for sure this year, if Walker Kessler signs for a starting salary of $38 million. Now, if you can get that down to, like, if it's escalating to there's so many things you can do here. We don't have to game it out too much, but, and the team is already going to fly over the first apron with Keontae's extension next year. The first apron restrictions are annoying, but you can get around them. It's more about like, the first apron is over the luxury tax. So if you're over the first apron, you're paying the luxury tax. The restrictions on team building over the first apron are annoying, but not like crippling. But over the second apron is when you get pretty crippling, because then your draft picks get frozen and all these other salary matching rules go away. So like you can't, you basically, your only roster moves you can make if you're over the second apron is trade guys away for nothing is the way that they're kind of balancing it out parity wise. So wow, what a frustrating Walker Kessler saga. So here's where we stand just to conclude all that. Walker Kessler took meetings as a free agent with presumably the Los Angeles Lakers and at least 2 other teams. It's reported that he has offers in the mid to high 30s annual value. We don't know anything about years or player options, but I've heard that, or it's been reported that it's flexible on that front, which is way, way, way higher than the 5 years, 140 offer that the Jazz reportedly offered during the exclusive negotiation window, which everyone that I've seen in the media said like that was a more than fair, if not an overpay for Walker Kessler to begin with. So if we're going $10 million a year over that, that's a preposterous overpay for Walker Kessler. Would the Jazz match it? I'm leaning yes, because we don't necessarily have to be in the luxury tax by matching that, but it does create financial problems down the road with Keontae George's extension also looming, and Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s contracts, et cetera, et cetera. So it just creates a fraught situation for the Jazz, who have made the logically correct choice every step of the way as far as preserving their cap space before the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, when the extension negotiations just didn't get off the ground last fall. Didn't make any logical sense for the Jazz to agree to an extension. And it didn't make any logical sense for the Jazz to do much of anything in the exclusive negotiation window other than offering the 5 for 140. So now I'm left thinking, like, should we have just done things with our heart instead? Okay. We'll see what happens with Walker Kessler. Let's check Twitter here to make sure that I didn't completely miss anything. Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever you got. Doesn't look like I'm losing anything about Walker Kessler. There's probably been a number of different things Lakers are also meeting with Jalen Duren as well, and query what the Lakers prefer between Jalen Duren and Walker Kessler. Okay. It's not all bad news in the Jazz Center market. Well, I don't know. Some people are going to say this is bad news. So, Jusuf Nurkic signs for 2 years, $22 million to the Utah Jazz. So that's pretty cool because I like what Jusuf Nurkic provides next to Jaren Jackson Jr. with or without Kessler, right? So there's definitely going to be minutes in the regular season where you want Jaren Jackson Jr. like at all times, except maybe in crunch time lineups. I want Jaren Jackson Jr. to be playing next to a 5, like at all times, because I think his body and his rebounding deficits point more towards playing next to a heftier guy. And Jusuf Nurkic is a hefty guy. So we liked Jusuf Nurkic on a tanking team last year because he did some things to help accelerate the improvement of Keontae George because, he's a good screen setter, he's a good passer, he's a good kind of team basketball kind of guy. I was frustrated with that Colin Sexton and a second-round pick for Jusuf Nurkic because Nurkic was considered damaged malcontent goods at that point, and Sexton was kind of a contributing player, but turns out every place that Sexton has been, he's been Colin Sexton, which is just kind of a replacement level guard who can do some fun things but gives you some problems and isn't exactly the most well-liked guy on his team because he's kind of like, not because he's a jerk, he's just more of like a intense guy that I think can be sometimes a tough fit. In his years in Utah, shouldn't read too much into this, but in his years in Utah, every time they come to Denver, I sit right behind the bench. And I love watching player-to-player interactions. I love watching player-to-coach interactions. It's been worse with some other players in the past. But in these tanking years, I haven't seen a player more have like a rougher relationship with his teammates and coaches than Colin Sexton. So... And it wasn't because, like, oh, he's a bad guy. He was just, like, he was kind of, like, always intense to a point of, like, discomfort by other players. So, seems like a good guy. He went to Alabama. I like cheering for Alabama because Nate Oates, who went to the University of Buffalo, coaches there. No one cares. So, I was grumpy about that trade at the time because Jusuf Nurkic did not have good exits in Denver and Portland and Phoenix. And it didn't seem like he was a guy who was going to be a good like locker room guy for a young developing team, and he was the opposite. He was incredibly cool. He was given an opportunity that he relished, and he really blossomed as a bench quality big. And I don't think he's an $11 million a year player. So let's get into why that is. So love his big body, love like the things he can do well. Here's what's going to be really annoying for us. He cannot finish at the rim. He has a preposterously low effective field goal percentage because he misses bunnies and putbacks at the rim like you wouldn't believe. Watching the Jazz and like they're intentionally trying to lose or whatever in the past year, you probably didn't notice it much, but the dude really struggles to finish at the rim sometimes. In the most annoying ways possible. So that's going to be kind of an issue. He's an okay offensive rebounder, which a lot of the modern NBA meta right now is possession control and juicing up how many possessions you can get and winning the possession battle against your opponent. And if you don't have a great offensive rebounding team, that's one area you're going to struggle. With Walker Kessler, who's one of the best offensive rebounders in the game, you're kind of succeeding there. Now, Jusuf Nurkic is one of the very premier best, maybe even the best in the league, defensive rebounders in the NBA. Should be some studies about that. Like, hey, why are you so good at this area of rebounding and not the other? Like, it's different, right? And of course, him missing shots at the rim is part of the reason for that. Like, he's getting one shot up and he's not a good, like, volleyball offensive rebounder. Like, you see some guys where they'll miss a shot at the rim but get their own rebound. So, like, kind of juices up their offensive rebound rate. So, he's not one of those guys. He doesn't really recover his own misses a whole lot. So, that possession battle gets muted a little bit. He was a great defensive rebounder, not a very good rim protector at all. So if his offensive rebound rate and his rim finishing were better, he would be a $20 million a year player. Because you can get around his rim protection issues depending on how you're building your team. Pairing him with Jaren Jackson Jr. is perfect in that context, right? So he's a good player. I don't know if it's an $11 million a year player. Good citizen, only a 2-year deal. And all of these deals, by the way, they get announced in the most agent-friendly way possible at the start. So the agents are the ones who are leaking to Shams and all that kind of thing. And so the agent preferred way of reporting it is the most possible amount of money. And I would be surprised if the second year of this deal, like if it's, let's pretend it's $11 million now and $11 million next year, I'd be surprised if it wasn't a team option or a non-guarantee on the second year. We don't know for sure. I'm just saying I would be surprised if it wasn't. And that $11 million next year could be interesting salary ballast for a trade, right? You need those medium salaries to enhance your team a little bit more. So he's not a Walker Kessler replacement. And if we went into this season only having Jusuf Nurkic and no one behind him as the starting center, or no one good behind him as a starting center, I'd be worried. I think that really is a paradigm for why I'm so upset about this whole thing. It's because we have this golden opportunity to come right out the gate going for home court advantage in the Western playoffs. I really do think that's plausible. Not just possible, but like a plausible scenario with how good this team is. And like Darren Peterson, yes, rookies are bad right off the gate, but where a rookie can help is if they have discrete NBA-ready skills right away. And what Darren Peterson does have right away is NBA-level shooting. 100% guaranteed, like not a problem, right? There's already clips of him in practice just like draining threes. Draining threes. So like that's a good bench contributor who's doing positive things on the court. So you have this golden opportunity to be a great team, and you just get to that 5th starting spot, and you look over and see Jusuf Nurkic, and you just go, ugh. Man, I don't want to pay $38 million for Walker Kessler, but that is what we have to switch with. And like then you're then you're leading further into, hey, we're playing our 5 most talented guys more often. Like we're not playing Jaren Jackson next to a center all of the time, like Mark was suggesting. We're playing Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5 a lot. And your starting 5 is actually, or your primary 5, even if it's not your starting 5, is the key Keontae George, Darren Peterson, Ace Bailey, Lauri Markkanen, and Jaren Jackson Jr. Like that's a formidable 5, but without a center of the likes of Walker Kessler or an equivalently oomphy player, I think you lose some of the upside on a night to night, and especially in the playoffs. And that's why this leaves me so frustrated. The Jazz also signed a new 2-way player, Tamar Bates, who had a foot injury with the Nuggets last year on a 2-way. He is a scoring type, swingman, shooting guard, small forward. And he is, he's a younger guy. I think he's 23, 24 years old. He was in Summer League last year and I remember seeing him in Summer League in Las Vegas. He was not good. So he's 23, turns 24 in February. So this will be his age 23 season. And played at Indiana and Missouri. He was undrafted in 2025 after a 4-year career. He was a 4-star recruit. And as I mentioned, he did have a foot fracture, so he didn't exactly get a lot of 2-way time in Denver. But what he was playing, the amount of time he did have with the Grand Rapids Gold in the G League did look pretty solid. Solid 3-point percentage, solid scoring, does a little bit. So he's more of a scoring type. And with Blake Hinson, who is also a scoring type, but a little bit bigger, I would expect the Jazz to either get to fill their third two-way spot with like a pure point guard or a big man. I know a lot of you are thinking, where's Elijah Harkless and all this? I would not expect to see Elijah Harkless back, but I will not speak ill of Elijah Harkless until we know for sure that he's not back. But I would be surprised if our third two-way spot is Elijah Harkless. I would also be surprised if we used one of our main roster spots on giving him a minimum guaranteed contract. I don't think Harkless is in the cards for the Jazz, but we'll see. Apparently everything is out in the open right now. So that's been Salt City Hoops. My name is Mark Pereira. Had some wine with you, getting in my feelings about Walker Kessler and what our decisions could have been along the way. By the time you're listening to this, perhaps we already have a resolution. But as I mentioned, next week we have a lot more free agency news to go over. I'd love to digest some of the other non-Jazz stuff, like Toronto bringing back Kawhi Leonard would be a fun topic to talk about. But I really want to, like, next week I want to talk about what we see in Summer League this weekend, not just from the Jazz, but from a lot of different teams. And so I just wanted to have a Walker Kessler discussion, give you guys something to chew on over the next few days, because I don't know if it'll be resolved immediately, but hopefully you guys take a listen and enjoy my own thoughts. And I just want to get in the horn and talk to you guys. So sound off, subscribe for free, and have some fun with me. This has been Salt City Hoops. I'm Mark. We'll talk to you next week. Good night.